broadcast on WRFPLP 101.9 FM.
Okay, so now that we are I'd like to call to order this session. My apologies for the delay. There's some weather conditions that prevented us from getting together in the time we scheduled. So are we in compliance with open meeting laws notifications?
Yes.
Then would you please do a roll call, Meta, to verify quorum?
Yes. Commissioner Bika,
Here.
Commissioner Harder,
Here.
Commissioner Lyons,
Here.
Commissioner Torres,
Here.
Commissioner Vu,
Here.
Commissioner Nordine.
Here.
Okay, we have quorum. Now we have the need to discuss personnel matters. So I would like to entertain a motion to adjourn to closed session.
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Vu and second by
Nordine.
Commissioner Nordine. Okay, let's do a roll call, please, Meta.
Commissioner Bika,
Yes.
thank you. Commissioner Harder,
Yes.
Commissioner Lyons,
Yes.
Commissioner Lyons,
Yes.
Commissioner Torres. Yes, thank you. Commissioner Torres,
Yes.
Commissioner Vu,
Yes.
Commissioner Nordine.
Yes.
Okay, so at this point, we're going to dismiss to closed session. Please go to the link that Aaron sent.
I think we're all here, Eric, whenever you're ready to go.
Are we all here? I cannot see. I see the agenda, but not all the faces.
I think all of
board
the
members are present.
Very good. Okay, so I would like to resume our open session, and we will do that inviting you to, if able, to stand up. Pledge of Allegiance will be offered.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God.
Thank you very much. Our next point in the agenda is our public forum. We will reserve a time for citizens to address the board, providing that he or she has additional information or new information that has not been previously shared at the meeting. The board will not hear personal complaints of school personnel or any person connected with the school system in a public forum. Meta, do we have any persons signed up for tonight?
Yes, Marissa has 2 folks signed up. She will call their names and then unmute them so they may address the board.
Thank you. Marissa, would you please say the first person?
Chad Durka.
Mr. Durka, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. I appreciate it. I understand that you will be discussing and voting the pass-fail option for our ECASD students for semester 2. I strongly urge you to vote against a straight pass-fail grading system for the following 2 reasons. Number one, my student, along with several others, have worked very hard during the 3rd quarter and have continued to work hard during the past month. My son has had new learning in several courses and did receive grades. I would hate for these students to see their hard work not affect their GPA in the positive way that they had planned. Number two, a straight pass-fail system will give students very little incentive, in my opinion, for engagement and effort, thus decreasing the level of learning that they could be reaching for this school year. I am empathetic and understand that not all students have the same resources at home of a pass-fail option, and a pass-fail option is more beneficial for them. With this being the case, please consider a pass-fail option on a case-by-case basis for students at the high school level where their GPA affects their post-secondary education. I truly believe the option of case-by-case basis at the secondary level will properly serve all ECASD students and those with resources and those without. Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Durka. Just for the record, could you indicate your address, please?
Yes, Chad Durka, 3405 Douglas Lane, Eau Claire, Wisconsin.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The next person is Marisa.
Sarah Hendrick.
Thank you. Ms. Hendrick, the floor is yours. Please say your name and your address.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, wonderful. My name is Sarah Hendrick. My address is 2028 12th Street. I'm the parent of a 7- and a 9-year-old that attend Lakeshore Elementary. With the boundary changes planned to go into effect in the 2020-2021 school year, I wanted to express my concern moving forward with the schedule. Due to the closure of school for the rest of this year, I'm very concerned about our children. This pandemic has really affected the mental health of our children to a point that we just don't know the extent of it, and it's also affected our community. I'm urging you to consider moving the timeline back 1 year to give our children the proper time to cope with the pandemic, catch up on their appropriate grade level with familiarity, say goodbye to their teachers, staff, and friends. Moving the boundary change back 1 year to the 2021-2022 year will also allow them to get acquainted with their new schools. There were many events planned at every school to introduce the kids to their new schools this spring, and they're all canceled. Thank you for considering this. I would hope that this could be an upcoming agenda for a next meeting.
Thank you very much. That was our public forum for tonight. We appreciate your participation. The next point in the agenda is board administrative reports, and we'll go with the superintendent's report. Dr. Hardbeck.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to review the upcoming school board events. Tomorrow, April 21st, we have 2 school board committee meetings. One is the LEAP committee, which meets at 4 p.m. in a virtual meeting. And the other is the Eau Claire Virtual School Governance Board, which meets at 4:30 in a virtual meeting. On April 22nd at 1 p.m., there will be a virtual meeting of the Revenue Committee. On April 28th, 1 p.m., there'll be a virtual meeting of the Budget Development Committee. And on May 4th at 7 p.m., there will be a virtual meeting of the school board. Tonight, I am very pleased to share that we have had several ECASD graduates receive a $500 grant from the Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction for obtaining their EMT certificate. The CTE incentive grant offered students a $500 grant if they obtained certification in certain career fields prior to high school graduation and then successfully graduated from high school. The 2019 graduates who received the grant are Calvin Scott, Chloe Morin, Mobim Adrabo, Simon Giese, Zachary Junker, Maya Thompson, Slippa Madakunta, Jada Hanson, Brooke Johnson, and Olivia Gray. And although these students could not be with us tonight, I want to send them my congratulations and the board's congratulations to these graduates on this accomplishment. It is certainly an indicator of their readiness for post-secondary success. And then the final thing tonight is that on behalf of all of the staff at ECASD, we would like to thank Charles Vu for his service. This will be his last official board meeting with us as an official board member. And in the time that he has served on the board, he's made very many contributions to the school district and to the school board. And I think all of us on staff will always remember his always pertinent question of how does this align with the strategic plan? He kept us on task and he kept us on point. So thank you, Charles, for your service. We appreciate all of your efforts greatly, and you are going to be dearly missed. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hardebeck. The next point in the agenda is the board president's report. My report is also going to be short. In the first place, I would like to announce that Commissioner Lori Kinghammer has resigned effective last week. And now we have 60 days to fill her position. So we will proceed to announce or to invite people from the community to apply for an appointment process, which will be starting soon. I would like to take the opportunity to thank Commissioner Kinghammer for her work in the short time that she was able to serve the community as board member. She exhibited great power and a lot of enthusiasm with very firm positions, always exhibiting humble and unbiased point of view, and was always ready to help in the board operations. I had the opportunity to collaborate with her in policy and governance, and many times I relied on her professional opinion to guide the process of policy making or policy drafting for the full board consideration. So for all these reasons, we are very grateful. We send our gratitude to Commissioner Kinghammer at a distance. She is checking in as audience, and we will be expressing our gratitude with a plaque and a certificate and some flowers, which we would have liked to give in person, but in these times of pandemic, it's not possible. So thank you very much, Commissioner Kinghammer. My second point in the report is thanking Commissioner Charles Vu. As Dr. Hardebeck mentioned, tonight is Charles' last official open session. So it's the last opportunity for him to engage the large community in this capacity in an open forum. I would like to say sincerely from my heart that his voice has always been an important voice in our board, has contributed in a very significant ways to our deliberations. His high ethical standards were always there, making sure that we made the best decision possible in benefit of students. I've always counted on his calm approach, and I've always counted in not only the question that how does it relate to the strategic plan, but also relied on his diverse perspectives. As we all know, Charles Wu was the second person of color in the history of Eau Claire to occupy a seat in the board. And he was always ready and courageous enough to remind us that the dominant perspective is neither the only one nor always correct. And for that contribution to diversify our spectrum and ideas to be considered, we are deeply in gratitude to you, Charles. We wish you well, and I would invite you to address the community before you officially go. You need to unmute your mic because we really want to hear you.
Okay, right now?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. First of all, I want to also thank both you and Dr. Hedberg for saying something very warm to my heart. It almost made me feel like if I can change the time, I would serve more terms. However, I also want to take this time to thank our community for allowing me to serve in this capacity for the last 6 years. Due to personal reasons, I am leaving after this official meeting. I believe in the power of a public education. Through my role as a school board member, I represent our children with this conviction. I hope that I did some of that through our decision-making, recommendation, and situation that I engaged in during the last several years. Our district faced challenging issues such as how to meet the needs of each child with the decreased funding but increasing need. Together, we engaged in conversation and make difficult decisions. My commitment has always been to support our staff in delivering a quality education for all students. To all Eau Claire School District staff and administrators, as a board member, I have first-hand experience of how hard you all work to meet the needs of our students and support our public education in this community. You have my admiration and support on and off school board. As I walk away from this being a school board member, I remain committed to supporting public education in this community on behalf of all students and families. Please continue to support each other, your school board members, your administrative teams in meeting the needs of our children in Eau Claire. I have full confidence that our district is moving in the right direction and stand ready to help in way that we all can. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our gratitude will also be expressed with flowers that will arrive to your home and a plaque and a certificate with all our gratitude. Thank you, Charles. My third point in the report is briefly also share that we have completed the process of interviewing our 3 finalists, and that now we are engaged in a process of debriefing and discussing their strengths and compare them to each other. So, so far, our anticipated date of announcement remains the end of April. So we'll be reporting as soon as we are able to arrive to consensus. That's all for my report tonight. Thank you. We have our student representative report now.
We don't see Morgan in attendance, so we can skip this agenda item.
Okay, I'm sorry to hear that. I saw her actively participating in the candidates' interviews. Thank you. We'll move to other reports. School board committee reports. We'll begin with budget development.
Thank you. Yeah, we did miss the budget development meeting that was scheduled for this last Tuesday, and it was moved to the 28th, as Dr. Hardebeck noted, due to all the activity with the candidate interviews. I will, though, take just a moment, because I think it's relevant, to say a word about budget. I started on budget. I had the good fortune of serving my first committee with Charles, and he was really quite a something of a mentor to me, actually, in terms of turning my attention from details to the bigger picture and trying to continually point us all as a committee in that direction. And it's a lesson I continue to try to follow. And I just want to thank Charles for his time and for his for being that role model. I did also want to say thanks to Commissioner Klinkhammer for her service. Similarly, great to learn from these two colleagues over the months and years, and will be really missed. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Harder. Demographic and trends.
The Demographic and Trends Committee met last Thursday, and we provided them with an update regarding the presentation by the chairman and myself at the last board meeting. And then we started talking about long-range facility planning, specifically for those schools that are overcrowded or at capacity right now. And so we're hoping to develop that long-range plan and have it ready, a recommendation ready for you by the end of the summer.
Thank you. How about the LEAP committee?
The LEAP,
not in, but
yeah, the LEAP committee is scheduled to meet on Tuesday, tomorrow.
Thank you very much. I will report that PNG, Policy and Governance, met last week, and we worked on some drafts regarding student grouping. We still have to work a lot on that language to reflect more up-to-date 21st century criteria for grouping. So that's coming in the near future. At this point, I will invite Commissioner Dr. Nordin for a legislative update.
Thank you. As you can guess, all news is COVID-19 news at the Capitol. This past week, the legislature and the governor, the legislature passed and the governor signed Act 185, a large COVID-19 relief bill to help support the state during this pandemic and the extension of the Safer at Home order. There are a number of provisions in the bill that affect school districts. I think one silver lining of Governor Evers' experience in education is that he has taken pains to make sure that the effects on our school districts are being thought about. There are several changes, as I said. The two largest ones that will affect the most of our colleagues and constituents and students are that students will not be required to take the state mandated assessments this year. And so and then related to that, districts will not receive their annual performance report. That's the district state report card. Those two changes will happen obviously because we are now working through this semester in virtual, and our teachers especially have now 5 careers, and at least one of them being in IT for students among their various things. So those, I think, are changes that will help us to focus instead on educating our students and keeping our staff and students healthy both physically and emotionally during this time. There are a few other changes. I'll just note a couple of them very briefly. There are some changes to performance evaluations for teachers and administrators so that student scores on state exams are not counted as a performance measure. Obviously, with no state exams, this will not be, they'll not be able to do it. There are some changes for insurance based on non-discrimination via COVID-19 and some testing, cost of testing not being passed on to people as opposed to, and then yeah, there are a few other smaller changes that are more technicalities. They are things that our central office will certainly work through, such as extending the open enrollment period. So certainly we'll have some work to do around that. But again, I just am thankful to the legislature and governor for focusing on schools in this bill. And obviously there's always more work to do, but we're glad that they are thinking about the way that this is impacting our students at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Nordin. I know you've been busy with all these updates. The next point in the agenda is a consent resolution agenda. We have a long list of items to consider tonight. They include the minutes of April 6, 2020, the minutes of special meeting of April 14th, 2020, the minutes of special meeting April 15th, 2020, the minutes of special meeting April 17th, 2020, a financial report for March 2020, the 2019-2020 budget adjustments, gifts in the amount of $12,873.72 for the period of March 1st, 2020 through March 31st, 2020. The payment of all bills in the amount of $11,420,668.04. A net payroll in the amount of $3,637,511.20 for the period of March 1st, 2020 through March 31st, 2020. Human Resources Employment Report, our preliminary notice of non-renewal for limited term contracts, our preliminary notice of non-renewal due to reduction in force, short-term relief options for elementary schools, and I ask Meta please to our Head Start cost of living adjustment, COLA, and quality improvement, QI, funds for 2020-2021 grant budget, Policy 185, School Board Committees, Policy 652, Revenues from Investments, Policy 184, Minutes, Rescind Policy 343.1, regarding instructional grouping, Ad hoc Employee Committee, COVID-19, updated compensation plan, Montessori contract changes, COVID-19 grading proposal. I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
A motion to approve the consent agenda by Commissioner Vu.
Second.
A second by Commissioner Dr. Nordin. Let's do a roll call to register our votes. Please, Meta.
Commissioner Bika,
Yes.
Commissioner Harder,
Yes.
Commissioner Lyons,
Yes.
Commissioner Torres,
Yes.
Commissioner Vu,
Yes.
Commissioner Nordine.
Yes.
The consent agenda has been approved. Thank you very much. Our next point in the agenda is board committee reports. And the first report is at-home learning update. And it's going to be in charge of Jim Schmidt or Dr. Hardebeck.
So Jim Schmidt is going to give you the report tonight. And as he's getting ready to do that, I want to talk a little bit about the challenges that we have faced in view of the school closures. You know, as Dr. Nordine said, the federal government has waived the reporting requirements to state accountability standards. But nevertheless, our commitment to providing quality instruction to our students continues. We have looked at the delivery of student instruction and ongoing educational opportunities and have really considered the questions about how to provide those services to students. The student coursework and instruction is critical for grade advancement, for future placement, and at the high school level, credit acquisition towards students' graduation, not to mention the intellectual growth that we have. These challenges are associated with this year's very unusual and difficult circumstances. In addition to these concerns, when schools were initially ordered closed by Governor Evers, the school districts had to move all curriculum and learning to online platforms and to provide other forms of instruction and enrichment that students could complete at home. Moving to online at-home instruction has posed a number of challenges, and a lot of those challenges are addressed with, we have to consider our obligations to provide equal access to all to those opportunities. We also must serve the needs of our special education students, our students who are bilingual, and we want to make sure that we are providing quality instruction. In addition to the concerns about the ability to meet the special needs of our students in a kind of purely online or virtual learning environment, we've had to give consideration to concerns regarding the students' different levels of access to technology necessary to complete these online educational opportunities, and other barriers that might be connected with the students' support system or home environment. We've worked very hard to be flexible in the way that we present instruction. These equity concerns have shown us that while we may provide virtual or online learning opportunities, we also must provide the attention to the social and emotional well-being of our students. And that is a major component of our strategic plan. So it is in this context that Mr. Schmidt is going to talk to you about how we are meeting these challenges. In less than a month, ECASD has moved from a classroom environment to an online environment, a very different kind of instructional delivery. And tonight, I think you'll hear almost an opening of schools report from the Teaching and Learning Department, in that they will be talking to you, and several people will be talking to you from the schools about how they have worked together to put together a plan that will meet the needs, academic needs of our students, but also address their social and emotional well-being. So with that, I'm going to turn that over to Mr. Schmidt.
Thank you, Dr. Hardebeck. Good evening. Get my presentation up. Marissa, you're just going to help me out real quick. Are you seeing the big one or the little one, Marissa?
The little one.
All right, so tell me if I got this the way it should be.
Looks great.
Thank you, Marissa.
You're welcome.
All right, good evening. It's really a pleasure to be here, and in large part, I can report an army of people and their efforts in this presentation. A small number of them will join us tonight to share their stories. But this is quite a story, as Dr. Hardebeck said. She said within a month we've done this, and we know that the closure took place just over a month ago. But really, a lot of this was done in a matter of days, and we continue to refine that effort over the days that followed the immediacy of the closure. So it's been quite an effort, and we really are going to try to help you understand that this isn't new material, but it's in a new way, and some new emphases that are in place, especially as Dr. Hardebeck alluded to with social and emotional learning. And really, if we have ever seen social emotional learning ever come to the forefront, this is its moment, because it has become very clear that the work we've done has set a good foundation in that area. We know we have much more to do, so it's something that we will dig into through this presentation, and definitely you should see the work of that continue as we continue with the at-home learning. The term at-home learning is actually a very good one, because much of it's virtual, but there is quite a bit that is not, and there are opportunities, as you'll hear from our kindergarten, all the way through different levels, that there's a lot of engagement happening that's not on the computer, but other ways for us to connect with our students. So with that, we will begin, and we always, in the spirit of Dr. Vu's Charles Vu's last day, again, our alignment to the strategic plan. So again, our focus on academic achievement, this alignment, because it does help us try to reach our students in new ways to meet both their academic outcomes and their social and emotional growth as well. Really creating a safe and supportive environment for our students to succeed. And we do know that the home can be a very different place than the equitable classrooms that we provide, but we're doing everything we can within our power and influence to try to create as supportive of an environment as we can for our students. Additionally, our collaborative cultures, we have seen, and I will share with you very soon, the efforts done by our staff, which was one of the most amazing things done in a week's time in terms of identifying the outcomes for student essential learning for the remainder of the year. It was a roll up your sleeves and get her done in an incredibly short period of time, and some really tough conversations, and something that's just been amazing watching our staff dig into that. Our high quality staff, we have found our staff learning at incredible rates, because they have to take their skills that they have already and extrapolate that to a new environment. And they're learning lots of new skills. And we're very excited, even toward the end of this presentation, to talk to you about opportunities to those skills with one another. And of course, the conversations that they're having with our staff or with our families, and really developing those partnerships. And really, we're finding the opportunities for engagement. It looks different. It doesn't look like traditional family partnerships, but it is happening in different ways, and you'll hear about that as well. We'd like to remind our staff and others around the core values driving our work. And the first is to love our kids and never to take our eye off that ball, but also take care of all of our people, the staff, the families, and our students. That this is a very unique time. And we should never lose sight of that opportunity every time we can, just to check in with our people to make sure that they're being taken care of in the ways that can help them be the best that they can be in the situations that they are in. And to remind everyone also that this is an unusual environment, but we are all in this together. This is happening to everyone at different levels and different levels of intensity, but we are all in this experience together, and it's something like none of us have ever seen. We know that for operating principles within those goal or our core values, I'm going to talk a little bit about equity and access. And I was appreciative of Dr. Torres talking about dominant perspective, and really the idea of we know that many of our students now face increasing challenges and obligations. There's loss of income, there's loss of sharing of space and technology with others, poor internet connectivity, stress and anxiety that's induced by the COVID-19 world that we live in. In addition, many of our students find that the reliable practices to succeed academically just don't work anymore. Their world is different, and adjusting to that is something that they're learning to adapt. And so disruptions may range from losing the place in their home where they used to study to not having, no longer having time to study on weekdays. We're finding students that have to pick up second jobs for their home, for their families, and really what was time for them to be able to work and dig into their schoolwork is no longer available to them. And so we also know that not only do these struggles threaten every student's success, but they disproportionately impact our underrepresented populations, students of color, students impacted by poverty, non-traditional homes, students that are homeless, special education, English learners. The challenges for students that come from those populations, it's just these struggles are amplified at a time like this. And so we keep this principle really at the front of our thinking and our conversations to realize that, again, the home can be a very different place than those equitable classrooms that we try to provide. We also look for as much flexibility as we can provide for everyone. We know that asynchronous conversations are becoming the norm. We do have a lot of meetings like this taking place simultaneously, but really understanding that flexibility in time and space to be able to accomplish the work we want to accomplish needs to be present. And finally, we need to do things that are sustainable. We really took at the beginning of this experience, we took 2.5 weeks, and that included spring break as well, to really take a step back and catch our breath, because we knew that everyone needed to find a new normal. And then before we really started to gear up towards new learning. And so I think that was a very smart move, because it was a sustainable practice. We found some other districts that got really aggressive early, having to scale back because everyone just became overwhelmed. And we really try to make sure that our practices are sustainable as possible. And then we're going to share some other strategies that we use in that area as well. So to provide our focus, we really worked on that development of common, sustainable, essential learning overviews. We had every team, academic team across this district, every grade level, every secondary department and courses within that, really focus on developing the essential learning overviews for the remainder of the year. Given the time that we have available to us, what can we accomplish with our students that are the most critical things? When we talk about essential, we really look at the things that are prepare us for the next level. So if you're third grade going into fourth grade, what are those critical things? What are those enduring things and transferable things that really garner our time and attention with a little bit of time we have left in the environment that we have? And so we created this template, and we worked with all, and we got input on what this would look like from our staff, and then really started to include, like I said, all those grade levels and courses. And really, this is being used for that weekly team planning and ongoing support. So teams now have a document that they can really focus in on for the remainder of the year. And as of this morning, we had 159 of these checklists done in the district, so at all levels. So why the checklists? These help define for us what's tight. What are the outcomes going to be? They don't tell us how we're going to get there, but they do define what we want to have accomplished. So it provides us with some communicate consistent expectations so that our families really know what it is that we are going to ask of our students. We also want to know in the next school year what sort of situation will our students, what will they have experienced that puts us on place to begin that next school year? And we're really having a lot of those conversations right now about that transition to the next year. And then finally, or not finally, and then on this slide at least, the opportunity for us to step in for one another if we must step away. We have not been hit like some of the larger populations in our country, but we really need, when we talk about sustainability, we have to put a plan in place that allows for, if someone in our teaching staff has to care for themselves or someone that they care for, we need them to have the ability to step away and for our students to still be supported, and really looking at things as teams rather than individuals, and really looking at these checklists as something that all students will experience for that course. And so the timeline for how this all came together really was that March 16th was that last day. It was a rapid day for deployment of devices to our students. And then we began distributing them the very next day to our staff. Then the days following, we provided supplemental learning at home. So our really focus was to deepen what we had already done, continue to develop and establish and maintain and develop those relationships we already have with our students, and then follow up with students on their technology, and also follow up with students on any of the learning that they need to try to catch up on. It really was a nice opportunity for students that had fallen behind to really try to bring their learning back up to where they would be a level of proficiency to earn credit for their courses at the upper levels, and also to be on pace with their peers at the lower levels. And then also that week of April 6th to 9th was the rapid fire at home learning checklist. Some phenomenal work done during that week, and then we met on the professional development and instructional planning day to share those checklists. And then really at the building level, the plan for how those would be implemented. So what was tight was what we wanted to accomplish, but how we could get there, as long as there were tools that were approved by the district. So for example, if you want one of the tools is Microsoft Teams, it's not Zoom, so you have to be using the tools that have been adopted, but how you use those tools and the flexibility was definitely within the purview of each of those. And then we began to publicize those checklists with our families April 15th. And then the essential learning really did begin this week. So that creation really was pulling those grade level teachers at the elementary and the early learning together, and then department chairs of the secondary, and then identifying and having those teams work to identify the essentials in each course, and then communicating with each other across the district to prioritize those learning targets, and then finally using the teams from teaching and learning to support that work. And so it was an all hands on deck, top to bottom throughout the organization. It was an amazing effort all the way through. And so the supports that have been put in place, and the priority, if you go to those right away, you'll see social emotional learning right at the top. And we also have that identified in other areas as well, but really putting the social emotional learning supports in place. And we've even talked more about how that will deepen as we move into the next year. This isn't something that's gonna fade away. This is something that actually has given us an opportunity to really continue to hone and integrate as much as possible into our district. We've also focused on our populations for English learners, special education, and gifted and talented. How do we support them and provide the support they need? We developed the at-home learning site. If you go to the district site at the very homepage, you'll see that link, which has lots of links, or has lots of links embedded within it to provide information for families. And we have the virtual learning site for our staff, which continues to be populated. It was always there, but it has grown leaps and bounds. We will share some of that story as we start to progress through this presentation. So what I'd like to do is turn it over right now to Kelly, Kelly Joyner-Burton. She's going to explain to you what this looks like at the kindergarten level. And really, if we think about as Kelly prepares to unmute herself and get transitioned into the role, something to think about is that our K2, those students don't have devices. And so it's a very different world in terms of working with those students, and actually at the pre-K as well. And then really students have the iPads at grades 3 through 6, and we'll talk even more about the distribution at the 7 through 12 level. So Kelly's going to talk you through what it's like to do this, support this learning from the kindergarten level. So Kelly, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Okay, can you hear me now?
I can, thank you.
All right, thank you. Well, thank you for the opportunity to share what we're doing here in kindergarten at Lakeshore. We've really, like Jim said, started from the ground up quickly to make this happen. So when we met right away when school was released as a team, we decided that we had some beliefs that we wanted to follow. And one belief was that we thought that kindergarten students should see their teacher every day. And we also felt that the lessons should be flexible for teachers to show the students our content and also for families to access that. So our platform that we chose was Facebook because we all already had a classroom Facebook page that we were using and families were already familiar with using that. So that just seemed the most logical place for us to start. And when the at-home learning checklists were developed, it gave us a really nice framework for us to know what was tight, what we need to essentially teach, and then also how we could do it was up to us. And we like that flexibility. So as you can see on my presentation, a Skyward letter is sent home each week with our daily lesson schedule, so parents know what to expect on these Facebook pages. And each day, each family will see their child's teacher in addition to 2 other teachers, and they'll be teaching an ELA lesson and a math lesson. And then we infuse science and social studies lessons too. And one common theme that we also want to emphasize is that we're using common household objects that people can easily find. For example, today my lesson was about counting objects of 20. And so I just encourage families to find things that they had around their home, like crackers or noodles or any other object they have readily available. We don't want families to feel like they have to go out and find something special. And in terms of sustainability, we are taking turns. We have a schedule so that if any of us would ever fall ill, like Jim had mentioned, that the program is still sustainable. So each teacher teaches 2 lessons each week, and then on Friday we take turns doing a special integrated thematic approach. And can you turn the page, Jim?
I was trying to, but well, there we go. I was trying to anticipate you, but it wasn't advancing.
And then other ways that we reach out to families are videos that are posted on our Facebook pages are also available on our Lakeshore at-home learning page, just in case there are families that do not have Facebook access. Although I would say that we overwhelmingly have a majority of families that are on our Facebook page and they actively participate. We also have a list of online resources on our at-home learning page that families can access. When school was released that last day, we sent home a packet of information with the kids and activity packets for the kids to do. When we called and checked families in a few weeks, we found that parents really liked that option. And so we sent home another packet just this past week. We make frequent phone calls to families, phone calls, emails, video chats, letters, and we ask people, how are you doing? What can we do to help? And overwhelmingly, they are very receptive and like what we're doing. It's also very challenging to hear some of the stories that the families are facing right now. Loss of jobs, loss of income, and just trying to navigate this with their families. And I did want to note that this is a full collaborative approach, that we couldn't do this on our own. My team is phenomenal. Abby Munns, Becky Dasher, and Kelly Kaler. Our MAPE specialists help us out a lot. Library media specialists, the AGR, title teachers, EL teachers, district leaders with teaching and learning department, and our building principal, Colleen Miner. It's everyone working together for the kids. And this last page just shows you an example of what families would see when they come onto my Facebook page. So on the far left, you'll see the picture that has the 3 posts together. So the top one shows me reading to the students, and then there on the left side is an ELA, and the right side is a math. That's what would look like each day. And in the middle, there's an example of a lesson. I was helping the kids with their sight words. And so I would say the word and then give children time to write the word, and then I would show them the word. And then on the far right side, you can see an example of what a student had done. His mother posted this back for me to see what the child had done. So it's a different way of interacting with the students, but it's working, and they are still learning the content. We're just approaching this a little bit differently.
Thank you, Kelly. I appreciate this. And Kelly, as I mentioned, she's working again with that level where the students were not sent home with electronic or with digital devices. And so Christy Brower from Sherman is going to walk us through what her experience looks like. Now, students at the grades 3 through 6 did get sent home with their iPads. And so Christy is going to share her experience and how she's been supporting students in that environment. So Christy, are you able to, you are good. You are ready?
Yeah, I'm good to go.
All right, thanks, Christy.
All right, so thank you for giving me the opportunity to share. I'm really thankful to be working with such a strong collaborative team during this time. When we first found out about the at-home learning, my team decided to create one Canvas course that all fifth grade students at Sherman were enrolled in, and where all the fifth grade teachers were contributors. Canvas is an online platform that we have used for learning on a regular basis throughout the school year, and so it seemed like a natural fit moving forward given the situation. It was also going to be sustainable because we could support each other as fifth grade teachers, and we could support all of our students. So we have different modules for different content areas, and on my slide you can see a sample on the right hand side of the math module that details like what students would be doing in Think Central. We have been embracing a collaborative culture and have our MAPE teachers, our librarian and guidance counselor contributing to activities for students, and the kids are highly engaged in those activities. Students are engaged in interesting and interactive activities on Canvas, such as virtual field trips. Kids got to go to the Great Wall of China, go to the Louvre, Georgia Aquarium, and we have students participating in creativity challenges through our art department and things that our librarian is presenting. One of our most popular discussion posts is titled Jump Around, which is appropriate for our state. Give it the jump around every Saturday afternoon, and kids are sharing what they are doing away from their screens outside and really encouraging each other to get outside and move. Teachers are communicating weekly with students through Canvas Inbox, and it's a great way for us to check in with our students to see how they're doing, as well as supporting them through challenges and questions they might have. We are sending messages weekly to families through Skyward to help keep them in the loop and let them know what their students should be working on throughout the course of the week. We think that communication and partnerships with families are essential for student learning, especially during this time. When I think about the collaborative culture in the fifth grade at Sherman, I think about the supports our team has from the title teacher, the EL teachers, the GT teacher, and our special education teachers. These individuals are excellent resources for our team by helping us engage all of our students. And they're also helping us to embed supports and tailor tasks to meet the needs of our learners. We also have SEA support and BEA support within our Canvas course, and that's priceless to us. In addition to all of this online learning on Canvas, I've been working with Sue Ayers and Karen Moldenhauer, who is a first grade teacher at Sherman. And we provided 2 professional development sessions last week for K2 teachers and some secondary special education teachers focused on Think Central. Think Central is the digital component to Math Expressions, and we are working to support teacher understanding of the platform so that students can continue practicing essential skills. And we have 2 more sessions scheduled this week to continue that work. That's what I have. Thank you.
Christy. And one of the things, thank you, Christy. One of the things that we talk about, that part about being loose and having the opportunity to let teachers really use their creativity and meeting the tight things that we expect that we get as outcomes. I know in my own home, I mentioned that Christy was going to be a presenter, and my wife said, oh yeah, we were using her Canvas template over in our building, and she teaches over at Northwood. So the grassroots creativity that started from one building really had an impact on another. And it was just a choice for that building to really recognize as something that was of quality and being able to take advantage of that. Thank you, Christy, for your efforts on that as well, because it had impact greater than just the building and the small teams you were working with, Bears and Moldenhauer's. So we're going to transition to middle school. And as I talked earlier, Alyssa Fromm is going to join us in just a moment. And Alyssa, excuse me, teaches at both North Star and Montessori. And as a gifted and talented, we talked about the other populations that are being supported beyond the general education classroom. And so Alyssa is going to share her story with us next and talk about how that has worked in this at-home learning environment. So Alyssa, are you ready?
Yep, I'm ready.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Alyssa Fromm. My job in the district has 3 parts. So I do gifted and talented resource at North Star and Montessori. And then I teach a section of Enriched English 6 at North Star as well. As well as I have 4 children in the district, 1 in 4K, 2 in elementary, and 1 in middle school. So seeing it from both sides has been quite interesting, but I would agree with what Christy and others have said. The collaboration has been absolutely amazing. Just watching teams come together and check on people and make sure everybody has what they need and helping with technology. It's been awesome. So the first thing on my slide is connecting with students and families. So lots of phone calls, checking in with kids and families, skyward emails. In our world, in the GT world, Bloom's taxonomy is a thing, the higher order thinking. But right now we're doing some more remembering about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, because right now that social emotional piece is so important. And that needs to be the first thing that we are concerned about with our students. Even GT kids right now are struggling, and they've opened up about that. And so we need to keep that in mind. It's all about a balance. The communication piece, I'm glad the district has kind of gone down to like the once a week message. That has been helpful for me as a teacher and as a parent. The first couple weeks, it was a little overwhelming, the amount of emails that were coming through. The technology piece. So again, the learning curve has been huge. Lots of new things have been learned. And that's awesome, because there are things that even when we get back to the brick and mortar school, we'll be able to utilize in our rooms. I know that I've lived some of that firsthand with like the bandwidth. Our house got a new router within the first because we have 2 parents working at home and 4 kids trying to do school. And so I've been dropped from several meetings. So that's a real thing. And it gives me the daily reminder that those are things our kids are facing as well. And to be gentle with them regarding those things. We've been doing a ton of collaboration in our department. We finished a book study. As you can see, we have a picture. That was our little celebration. We've been working hard to provide resources to our teachers, not to be overwhelming with those, but to have them on hand when we need them and when students need them. Normally this time of year, we're working on placements for next year. So that's been a little bit of a challenge for us. We've been thinking creatively of how to make sure we have enough information to make choices about where students are going to be placed for next year. And I think in the end, I just remember that we're all in this for the kids. And I feel that the school district has really kept that in mind for parents and as well as teachers. I appreciate my colleagues totally understanding when one of my kids shows up in a video chat or a meeting. They've made a couple appearances. So just a tremendous amount of support, and it's been awesome.
Thanks, Alyssa. It's kind of funny when we were preparing for this presentation, one of them said, "I'm worried about my dog barking in the background." I almost actually was hoping it was going to happen just so that we got a sense of what reality has been like, because periodically getting that traffic, either both the sound or the actual physical traffic passing through meetings has been quite the norm, but people have just worked right through it. It's been really amazing to watch. So soon after the closure, I touched base with our Stephanie Sturgis, who's going to talk with us next about her experience with her physical education students. And when we talked about this presentation and really trying to help develop at least just an initial picture of what it looks like to do at-home learning, we really wanted to have an opportunity of that art, music, phy-ed lens as well. And so I want Stephanie just to share her story and some perspective from her students that have been living it. So Stephanie, are you on?
I sure am.
All right, thank you.
I'm just a little nervous that you spoke a little too soon, as my children are locked someplace in this house. So you might have gotten ahead of yourself there, Jim. So our department, we felt extremely fortunate to have that one more day with students before that Monday before the closure. That day was a day in education I don't think I'll ever forget. Our job as physical educators at that point, we wanted to make sure that we made it perfectly clear that this was not meant to be something that you just had to do. Like one more thing on your list. Those kids are really nervous about the amount of work they're getting. Phy-ed certainly wasn't supposed to add this stress. In fact, it's supposed to take it away. So now more than ever, it's essential for our students to understand the value in movement and how it directly relates with their mental health and emotional well-being. Physical education has a valuable opportunity during this time and at-home learning. Our department at North High School made the collaborative decision to put a pause on the very specific content that we always teach, but instead we're focusing through instruction and focusing on their social emotional learning for our students. Each week, our department provides various resources, such as yoga videos, running and walking programs, at-home challenges. We change it up. I think they're extremely thankful they don't have videos of their teachers trying to work out during this time. They certainly don't have to pick those exact resources. It's honestly just there for them. Some students really like it. They need that direction. I think sometimes we all do. But other students are coming up with activities that best fit their needs. It can be as simple as a walk out of your house sometimes, away from the people that you're stuck in that house with, and enjoy that physical activity. The most important part to our at-home learning experience is the connection and feedback that we share with our students. Jim, if you want to go ahead and, you did it already, good job. Oh, you're on it. Our focus on instruction has become engaging with students through virtual platforms to help guide the students into an understanding of how their chosen physical activity has benefited them mentally and emotionally. So these are just student responses. I'm not kidding you when we have thousands. The actual act of them entering this in should take all but just a couple of minutes. The focus is the movement again. So they go on Canvas, they hop on, they tell us what activity they picked, they tell us for how long, and then they tell us how it made them feel. So these are just a couple of the examples. I'm not sure if I left on the one where, I think I left out when a kid said his face was cold and he was going to wear a hat the next day. So these are awesome. They're great talking points, and we reach out to kids. So we collect it. It's super easy on Canvas. We run a report. We can see how many times a kid has entered. So if we see one that's kind of lacking, we reach out to them, and we certainly don't hesitate a kid that's been doing a good job, because these times are, I think, as many of you hopefully have gotten the experience, important to keep our bodies moving. I think my husband is very grateful at the moments that I can leave and come back a little bit more patient.
Thank you, Stephanie. And is one of the pieces when I used to work a while back with Stephanie and others on the physical education curriculum, and we would talk about invasion games and target games and net wall games. But really, there was that fitness component too that was a big part, and really they've leveraged that in terms of supporting that social emotional learning and growth for students as well. So it's been a nice match that I thought was real important for us to listen to. So thank you. The next person is going to be Lindsay Anderson from Putnam, and really the role for our special education staff. There's some pillars here, and I really want her to share that experience with you, because, and I don't want to take the speak into it in front of time, but there's really some key components that the special education staff has had to navigate as we have moved into this new environment. And so Lindsay is going to take you through that now.
Thank you. So I like to kind of think about special ed of going through kind of phases. That's kind of what our journey has been. So for like the first phase of our at-home journey, we started by sending home packets of like supplement materials, iPads, communication devices, some books even, some manipulatives. We just sent them home with students. The second phase began the process of actually creating individual COVID-19 service plans. So IEP team members came together virtually to develop these plans to determine how and when students' instructions and services will happen during this closure. We then reached out to families to discuss the best way for them to receive their child's plan. These plans align directly with students' IEP goals and look and feel different for each and every single student. During this time, IEP meetings have continued to be held via the WebEx. Service providers, general education teachers, administration, and even families all came together to virtually create IEPs for students by continuing to follow the career and college-ready IEP process. Getting all participants connected and teaching them how to navigate the program was a huge undertaking. Jim, can you turn the slide, please?
Yep, absolutely.
Awesome. So then here, this is kind of a picture of like our third phase. That's what's happening right now. Our COVID-19 service plans, they rolled out today. It's a new, unique way of learning. This has been a huge learning curve for both the teachers and for the families. Students' home-based instruction is tailored to each individual student's needs. Some students and families need help supporting children with challenging behaviors. They need visual schedules, new behavior programs, and support on how to provide structure for their child in the home. Other students and families are able to focus primarily on academics. However, students' abilities vary, and often there's no curriculum to support that need. Because of this, special education staff are reaching out to each other. They're sharing resources and materials. They're problem-solving various student needs. They're even discussing new instructional opinion or options and techniques. Not only are we providing face-to-face virtual meetings with students, but we're also sending families learning packets in the mail. And
Did we lose Lindsay?
Yeah, we did.
There's an alert on our end that due to low bandwidth or local computer conditions, she was lost.
Okay. So if Lindsay's able to rejoin us, we can let her, we can step back and let her finish. But the big takeaways when we talked before Lindsay presented was really the 3 pillars of supporting students, collaborating with general education teachers to support those students in their implementing their IEPs, and that IEP development, and 1,738 IEPs needed to have service plans developed. And those service plans really were the conduit to helping the IEPs be actualized in the at-home learning environment. Was Lindsay able to rejoin us, Maida? Okay. So we will move forward, and then if Lindsay is able to come back and finish her comments, we will listen to her again. So the next step that we will talk into has really been the bilingual education in the EL program. And Sunny Mayo DeGoss is going to join us for this piece of the conversation. And we have over 400 documents that have been translated, emails, lessons, district documents, IEPs, into languages including Hmong, Spanish, Mandarin, and Vietnamese. We have our bilingual assistants. They've been able to do these connections with families and students weekly. And really, we have learned about as much about the challenges from our families through our bilingual education assistance as with anyone. And these are the different things that they've been assisting with. And so what I'm going to do is give Sunny a chance to share her story and her experience over the past month about supporting those students. So Sunny, are you ready?
Yes, can you hear me?
I can. Thank you for joining us.
Share our experience as we with these days going on now, and like how much we're receiving support from our teachers and the connection we are having with our students right now. As you say here on the slide, it says that we connect with families and students weekly. We call and message students daily to follow up with their well-being and their schoolwork. And we use Teams, WebEx, Cisco Jabber to help them to do the homework. We also connect with the families weekly to make sure that their food and financial needs are being met, and also to give updates on how their students are doing in school. We also have been attending classes and staff meetings for updates and follow up with online learning process and for collaboration with the teachers. And when we talk about technology, we connect with counselors and the district office to request devices for our students. We help the families to set up their internet services. We also help the families and the students to navigate through Canvas, Skyward, WebEx, Teams, and check the school emails as well. We have been translating and interpreting for teachers, students, staff, and district office. These can include IEPs, homework, different school documents, and/or district documents as well. I can tell you, I received text messages from students at 10:59 Friday night or Saturday night, asking if I can help them with some homework that they don't understand something. You know, they
teenagers actually like they kind of like work better at nighttime, and we have been like there supporting them at any time they need. Sometimes it is like 11 or midnight. It's like, no, I'm sorry, I'm sleeping. But we help them anytime like they contact us, their families, even when they're not EL students. We have like any Spanish speaking family, Hmong speaking family. They reach out to us for some help with any documentation, any information about what's going on, if they can go out for a walk with their students just to getting out of the house. Like they call us and we are there to support the families and the students.
Thank you, Sunny. I appreciate that and the efforts that you're taking. We've learned a lot from the experience of your team.
Thank you.
I understand also that, Lindsay, the error that showed up was similar to what happened to Dr. Hardebeck. I think we're having some power issues in town due to the recent storm. So hopefully everyone is okay and is able to reach me soon. I want to share a little bit about, you're going to see a lot of numbers right now, especially the technology. And some of these are wowing numbers just due to the size of our district. And remember, you'll see with students, laptops for students who have been deployed in grades 7 through 12. And so these are students that requested additional devices to be able to support them at home. You can see how many iPads went out for our students in grades 3 through 6. You can see how many students were using their own access to technology, and we'll talk about some of those challenges when we get toward the end of the presentation as we look at moving forward. You can see how many are in the queue. As Sunny, if you heard her say when she was talking about reaching out, and they've been doing a specific reach out to make sure that our students all have devices that they need to be able to support the learning that has to take place. And so we've been reaching out still with both of our bilingual education assistants to being able to reach out to our English language learners, and also to our special education students. The staff has been reaching out to determine what sort of needs they have. The hotspots, which create that Wi-Fi access through a cellular connection, we've distributed that 35 to students to date, but we have 199 in the queue, and that distribution is ongoing. And so we also have 1,500, 1,500 HP Stream laptops being prepped for at-home usage as well. These, we went around and right now students are not all assigned individual devices, so we've had to go through and start pulling different laptops. These are older laptops, are at the end of their life. We have to re-image them so that we can get them in an at-home learning environment, which is something that they were not prepared for. So we are working on that as well. We've been supporting our staff, and you can see how many laptops were deployed to our staff and hotspots distributed to staff as well. And a big thank you on both items to our the Public School Foundation for supporting the purchase of those hotspots. There is a monthly cost per hotspot, and so we're very appreciative of their support to be able to have those to support the distribution of those to both staff and students. We still have some challenges as well. We have we are in an electronic world, but being able to physically scan and print documents has been a challenge for our staff, especially the a lot of our office staff that have to work remotely, and we've been working on those solutions remotely, and also to have enough devices for all of our support staff. And we're going to show you very soon about what that would mean to support those staff. We look in the rearview mirror and are grateful for some of the things that we did to lead up to this. We never planned for this to happen, but we had enough vision, and James Martin and the technology team have been pushing a lot of off-site resources. These are, you hear the advertisements about putting things into the cloud, and we really started moving our H drives and shared drives to SharePoint and OneDrive. Now looking back, we were just grateful that happened. Otherwise, people would not be able to access their files. We have video storage in Ensemble. So rather than our staff, if they want to create those videos, going to a variety of different tools, we have a video creation and storage and sharing platform for them. Canvas, as you heard earlier, is that place, that environment where we can exchange content, expectations, and a variety of resources with students and staff back and forth. And that platform is really, that learning management system is really critical. We also, on a very short timeline, deployed some new solutions, things that we didn't expect. One of which you already heard about, which is Cisco Jabber. And Jabber allows you to use a laptop to act as your phone from your office. So I can dial from my laptop and it looks like it's coming from my extension. And so if you want to not look like it's coming from your cell phone, and have the privacy and security of having it come from your office. Cisco Jabber has been in place for us, and we are grateful that we have that tool in place now so that we can allow people to be able to do their work without invading their personal lives. So that's been a big advantage for us and that got put up in about 3 or 4 days by our technology staff. And there's a lot of engineering that had to go into that. The virtual private network as well. A virtual private network is, if you can consider, a big, long Ethernet cable to your house from your office, but is done virtually. The reason why a virtual private network is important for some staff, so if you are working in our finance system, we do not want you working over an unsecured or not as secure of an environment. We want you in that tunnel that is very, very secure, which is a VPN. And so certain employees have access to this just because of they are really sitting on top of some very, very sensitive data. And so really expanding that. And also the WebEx client. So you are experiencing that tonight. We do have Microsoft Teams, but WebEx does give us an opportunity to be able to use the call-in feature that is not available to us in Microsoft Teams. And as Lindsay mentioned, that has been really invaluable to us as we've gone into doing the IEP meeting as well. And also the offsite filtering. So we have the iBoss filter has allowed those devices, as they've been taken offsite, to still filter. And so one of the things people say is, if I only need a hotspot, well, we will not deliver a hotspot without also giving you a device, because all of our hotspots have to be tied to district devices. And the reason for that is that our district devices, our hotspots are configured to work only with our district devices to ensure that we have that filtering, so that if we send that technology home, we aren't having inappropriate sites being accessed. We want that environment to look as similar to the school environment as possible, and that's one of the ways that we can do that. So we're going to talk just a little bit about the tech support, the help desk, and we really have shifted and realigned our staffing to be able to support our staff and students in a very, very different way. And Cassie Steger from our technology department, and formerly of the library media department, is going to share that. And the reason why I wanted Cassie to join us is she is really a good example of an employee who used to work in one department and now is another one, but these two departments are critical. So if you can think about it, our counselors are being used right now to identify students who have needs. They input that data, the tech department picks it up, they then get the devices prepared and then deploy them through our library media, because our library media really manages inventory. And so it's been that collaboration. And so Cassie's going to talk through what that experience has looked like, and hopefully a little bit about the pictures as well. So Cassie, are you able to connect with us?
Yep. Yep. Excuse me. Sorry. So my name is Cassie Steger, and as Jim suggested, that I was part of the library media team. I was a cataloger for almost 5 years, and then I came into the IT support specialist role back in January. So it has been a very eventful 4 months, kind of trial by fire almost. So the thing that I want to talk about today is our IT 411 help desk. So we had, back when we were still in school, we had a phone number that teachers could call to talk to someone live about a problem on their computer. Well, now we have scaled that IT 411 help desk and we have made it public. So now we have an outward facing number. And so anyone can call that is a member of the Eau Claire School District. So I've had calls from 5th graders. I had a 5th grader call that their iPad wasn't working, and he was just so excited when I did some stuff on the computer and was able to make it work. And I've had grandparents call, aunts and uncles call, parents, teachers, just everyone. And it's been such a challenge, and to, just kind of expand our customer base. Before we knew, it was a very, very narrow customer base with just teachers. And now we have to kind of do like an interview with everyone that we talk to, and we talk to when they call into the help desk. And so to help support that model, we went from 4 people answering the phone every day to 9 people answering the phone. And even that is not always enough, especially when something happens and phone calls are just flooding in. So in like a normal 30-day period, we have about 175 calls that come in. And just in the last 30 days alone, we've had over 300. So it's been a very significant increase. And so we are also, I just want to touch base on the pictures that are on the slide. So the left one is one of our tech North Star, Cindy Shannon. She set up an imaging station on her dining room table. So she is busy imaging streams that are going to be distributed soon to our students. And then the other two photos were actually taken today. They are part of our drive-up service model, where students, after we have identified we can't help them over the phone, they need to come in to get some technology help or get a device or a hotspot or anything like that. We have the ability to service them through a drive-up model. So they come to the BOE, we have 2, sometimes 3 people in the parking lot directing traffic, taking people's names, they radio into the building, and we have people doing inventory and people doing technology pieces, and we're able to service everyone who has an appointment. And we try to do appointments. We're usually very successful with the appointment piece, but sometimes we just have people that have such high needs that they have to come right away. But we try to stagger those appointments so that we are appropriately social distancing.
Thank you, Cassie. I appreciate it. And on the work, and it was, we were, believe it or not, when we had the snowstorm last Sunday, our first concern was getting the district office plowed so that we could do the type of work you're seeing happen out in our parking lot. So, I mean, we took this model, what we saw from what was happening over at Best Buy, and really have deployed it here as well to ensure that we can still provide the service, as Cassie said. And it's really been a redesigned service model. And so they've done a wonderful job providing support to all of our customers. So some other of our technology support in the communications that have been in place. Again, we've talked a lot about Canvas, and we've also talked about Microsoft Teams, and we've seen thousands of team meetings take place now. And then the chats within those team meetings are in the hundreds of thousands. We have a virtual learning support page, as we mentioned, that continues to be populated, and we have over 60 newly created or updated guides for our staff to be able to implement what they're doing in the classrooms. And we really also had to work around open meetings, as we're doing right now, to make sure that we met open meetings requirements and also student data privacy, that really put some systems in place to ensure that that we are doing our due diligence in each of those areas. And then also creating those online resources for families on our at-home learning page. And those continue to be the evolving materials, including the latest one is a Netiquette one that we created, a nice little visual that was created by our team. We've also seen enrollment. Believe it or not, enrollment is still going on. We have nearly a couple hundred enrollment applications processed for students coming into the district. We have nearly 24 new students that have started within the district. About that since March 16th, nearly 24 students have actually begun their learning with us. So that's amazing, because we have to keep moving forward. We are required by law to bring students on when they apply to us, and so we really have helped create a paperless enrollment process. We've taken a 3-page physical enrollment and made it online, and so our staff there has done an amazing job, and they have just been on top of every move that to make sure that our students and families have the service that they need, and also for students that are leaving us, they help create the conditions so that we could work with the buildings so that they could fax records out to buildings as students were leaving the district as well. So we've just done an amazing job. A few other faxes on Overdrive is our electronic access to books. We have nearly 12,000 titles that have been checked out. Electronic books that have been checked out in the first month. We still have our reading partner program through the EW Claire, and we are not doing those in-person visits anymore. We've been really working on the evaluations from our volunteers, but that work still continues. We continue to work with our Title I students at our private schools. That is part of our requirement and our obligation. That still continues, and our off-campus program is still continuing to ensure that we have students earning credit that are really on the edge of graduating. So those programs have all continued, even in this new environment. We've also have this amazing thing of the yellow Meals on Wheels delivery of meals to the community, in addition to the drive-up meals that take place between 11:30 and 1 at our middle schools. As of today, over 42,000 meals have been provided. Today was our biggest day. There was 2,700 meals just today. And then Feed My People, also 6,000 more meals since March 16th. So I know that Abby Johnson and Josh Guckenberg have just been working around the clock to continue to optimize this program and work with all of the staff to try to make sure that they can help provide those meals. We have, and then we are also about to turn some of those meals. We have had the opportunity to also have some book giveaways through our Title I program, and we are going to tie those book giveaways to take place at the meal deliveries as well. So families, when they come to get those meals, we'll also have signs out if they are from a Title I school, and some of those deliveries will take place, and we'll be communicating that, refreshing you on just in a moment. The other piece too about the bus meals is not a static situation. Abby and Josh have worked to really add routes, to change or include new stops, to really make sure as they work with student transit to really try to meet as many families as we can, to try to push the boundaries of our delivery as much as possible. We also know that our buildings and ground staff have been just working around the clock trying to make sure that those buildings are deeply cleaned, and that inventory process has been updated. You can see the number of square feet and facilities that they have taken care of, and also the beginning some of that summer use and cleaning and maintenance has begun as well as some of our construction projects are also starting a little bit early as well. We have also taken care of checked our inventory of our personal protective equipment, and you can see the distribution of masks and other PPE to the staff that have been working out at our sites. And then the signs on our district playgrounds regarding the safer at home order. So if you go by one of those sites, you'll be able to see very clearly that that those sites are actually closed as well, just like the city parks are. We also have been continuing to maintain our connections with our families. You can see the different tools that we've been using, and the number of reaches, like for example, just on the reaches on Facebook alone have been over 250,000 since the closure, and all the different tools that we are continuing to leverage to be able to reach up electronically and in person as much as possible. You know, we are a relationship-driven organization, and so we are continuing to optimize these tools to the best of our ability. On the human resources end, let's see, did I go backwards there? There we go. On our human resources end, you can see the webinars and legal briefs that we've been doing related to the Coronavirus Relief Act and the CARES Act. This has been a big undertaking. Trying to navigate the legislation that's been going on is significant. It is changing by the day. I keep telling people there are 3 days that we really are at the top of our mind: yesterday, today, and tomorrow, and we get new stuff every day, and being able to navigate that has been quite a challenge. And so our HR department has been on top of that. They've also been modifying the educator effectiveness implementation. DPI gave us some flexibility, which we have leveraged to allow for the educator effectiveness to take place, those evaluations in a remote environment. And so we are optimizing that as well. We've also tapped in, as we typically do when we have unusual situations, to real living and creating that weekly self-care workshops, and also the resources for both employees and their families, and have moved as well to the electronic hiring process. So the interview processes now, as we saw with the superintendent, likewise for all of our other applications, all of that is being done electronic and done through the virtual meeting environment when face-to-face is required. On the business services, we've been able to maintain that payroll schedule for employees, and also initiating that online time card reporting. So we've been moving staff to online time cards, so that if you can think about a time card having to make its way through the board mail, that really would slow down payments. So really accelerating the online time card process, that initiation of that effort, by accelerating that, has allowed people to be paid appropriately and on time. We've also ensured that our vendors have been paid, so we have over 300 vendors being paid, and also setting up the printing services. So when we have, as Kelly mentioned at the beginning, packets being run for a kindergarten classroom, so that the business services has been supporting so that that can take place as well, because the access to the buildings is not available for our staff. Well, as we look at the next steps in programming, we really are looking forward right now to the May 22nd Professional Development and Instructional Planning Day. And the reason for that is that we have work to do leading up to that, and the focus is really the transition to next year. That work will look different than the work we did leading up to April 13th. We don't need to redesign learning outcomes. What we really need to talk about is an implementation into next year, and how we really bring students from this experience into that experience. We are hopeful, very hopeful, that that will be in person. But number one, and you heard this over and over again, is that social emotional well-being, and really talking about re-entry for our students. And that will be a very, very important process for us at all levels of the organization. And really, again, knowing that we have at-home learning checklists and pacing guides that really can guide the academic work and the social emotional learning work integration as we move forward. And then we will finalize that planning on May 22nd. We also expect, as you mentioned, as you heard earlier, training for our staff with each other about what they have learned from virtual learning, and an opportunity for our staff to really learn from one another about the strategies, techniques, and skills that they have developed. So we have some very robust online learning tools. We hear about what other districts are doing, and we take inventory with what we're doing, and we see that we are doing an outstanding job. We continue to bring new tools in. We're very cautious about the tools that we do adopt, because we don't want to bring something in that people may fall in love with that may not have funding in the future. And some of the tools that we have already are very robust. We just have to really work on helping people leverage their maximum. Other logistics, as we think about what we've done, and we asked our folks to prepare as if we did not return in the fall. And almost all the time has gone into making this transition and preparing for this transition. But we've learned since that the time away, our original time away of 2.5 weeks, really got extended. The conditions have extended as well. We know that the environment, one only has to watch the news, that what we've been doing and preparing for this really has put us in a good position for moving forward. But we've had to adapt, even because, again, we thought first it was going to be till April 3rd, then it was going to be till April 24th, then it was now going to be through the end of the school year. So there's been a lot of adaptation going on. We've learned a lot as well, and we have really stretched the resources we have to the maximum. And when Cassie says, that we've gone from really pushed more people into the IT 411, it's mean that they're not doing other things. We've really had to try to have people work in different ways to really to leverage as the resources to meet the needs, immediate needs we have for our school community. And we are, again, appreciative of the limited resources we have and the way the foundation helps step in to support, especially the hotspots for our students. They also wanted to step in and help us with devices. The issue we ran into was on that end is the ability for devices to actually ship. Believe it or not, other people want devices too right now as well. So it's a pretty competitive market to obtain resources. As I think most of us know, if we order anything from Amazon.com, it doesn't come the next day anymore. And finally, we determine what we need in order to be sustainable, flexible, and to have the equity that we want. And so as we look to the future and we think about what we need, and one of the questions that Dr. Torres asked at the end of last meeting was really begin to think about if we were to have to be in an entirely online environment, and if we were to really try to develop or have the resources in place for every student, because right now we really are not. We do not have electronic devices. I'm almost afraid to leave this because I love watching these kids wash their hands, but we're going to move on to the next slide, and that is what the estimated cost would be to put laptops in the hands of every student 7-12, and what it would be at the early learning and K2 level to put iPads in every student's hand. And we also know that we're coming up against a refresh as well of iPads. So we have some devices that are near the end of their life. We also know that each staff doesn't have laptops. And we also know that secondary music folks have a need for music for iPads, just like our staff had last year. And also the staff support iPads. And then finally, if we want to push our boundaries and have external Wi-Fi, one of the things, if you go to the administration building, you will see jerry-rigged Wi-Fi hotspots or access points up against the windows, because we need to push the Wi-Fi into the parking lot. So when those families came up to do the device pickup, one of the first things that they need to do is be able to log into that device on our network. And so the need for Wi-Fi to extend beyond our walls has become quite apparent. And then something I skipped over right in the middle was the cost of a full-time student. If we were to ever purchase online services, just the content alone and having a teacher work with us is nearly half of what it costs for that we get in state aid for students. Keep in mind that that doesn't do any of the other services that we wrap around, special education, gifted and talented, EL, all those other things that come with it that bring a cost. So just the hardware alone is $4.5 million if we were to try to put a device in every student's hand for next year. And so that's a pretty big price tag. And so we just wanted to understand that if we were to take inventory and try to solve this overnight, it's a lot of money. And so as we move forward and we start thinking about the models and the supports we try to provide for our students in an online environment or an at-home learning environment, and I usually will try to even correct myself because it is not all virtual, it's not all online, as Kelly gave us a really good example earlier. So with that, I did ask those that helped present to stick around in case you had questions. But I will open the floor to board members if they have any questions in terms of what at-home learning has looked like in the Eau Claire School District in the last month.
Thank you very much for this wonderful report. It's very inspiring. I would invite board members to share some commentaries or questions if there's any.
This is Lori. I just wanted to say thank you to Jim and all. This is incredible, and I'm so appreciative of you sharing this information.
You're welcome. I am humbled a little bit to be the one presenting, but it is an army of folks that have done this work. And it's really, I pulled it together in terms of the coordination of this, but it's really, it's amazing watching how people have worked over the last month. They really have rallied, and it's been extremely inspiring to watch. I think we have a lot to be proud of the 1,500 employees that support the 11,500 students in this district. Thank you.
Jim, this is Charles. I also want to say thank you for all your team members for making this virtual learning possible. And while your staff are still with you, I'd like to ask a question that you or they may be able to shed some light.
Yes.
So in preparation for your curriculum at home, you must be thinking about what the outcome of the learning would be like. In other words, how would you know what the student learned, and what would you take into consideration about grading?
Right.
Since that will be our next topic, I'd like to hear from you and your staff about what you have in mind in terms of grading.
So that was part of the consent agenda to pass that grading policy, but it's really, while the content is not new, it's not new materials, because it's being done in a different way, and the pace that it's able to be delivered right now, and especially as I mentioned earlier, that equitable experience in the home is not the same as in the classroom. As we look at the amount of content right now and the amount of time that we allocated to for expectations of our students, it's really about a quarter or less of what they typically do in a quarter. So really the shift was those key essential elements. Even though we had that face-to-face instruction for the up and through May 6th or March 16th, the grading now really is around did students demonstrate whether or not they have been able to meet the essential learning outcomes for that course, and really looking at a performance-based, activity-based model as opposed to a testing-based model. The reason for that, of course, is that the equitable opportunity for students to not only have to be able to learn the content, but also to be able to demonstrate what they can learn. There has to be a large amount of flexibility. And so by going to a pass, no pass system, it allows for that flexibility for students and the instructors both. And I tell you, as we reached out to our instructors and all levels of the organization, I've rarely have I ever seen unanimous support of a system that's simplified as we are going to now, because they recognize, as you heard as our presenters talked earlier, our families and our students really were dealt an unusual circumstance that took quite a bit of time just to reorient themselves around. And so that circumstance also requires a different way of looking at how we grade and assess students. And as we looked at the different models around the country and in our state, our staff felt very comfortable with a model that again, look back at those core elements of flexibility, sustainability, and equity and access. And that's really why that no pass model was brought to the board by our staff.
Any other questions? Any other question?
I do. This is Commissioner Hart.
Yes, Commissioner Harder.
Just echo to the thanks to you, Jim, and to the whole staff for this incredible effort and turnaround with, of course, no notice and totally unforeseen, but amazing to see what this team is capable of. Very, very grateful and very proud of this team, both as a board member and especially as a parent with 4 kids in the district. I have a question about the next step slide that's up here. Obviously, this is, I believe we're talking about this scenario being, oh, what if we return in September, right?
Right.
And is this looks, I'm wondering about, for example, the cost for online purchase services. Is that kind of a worst case? Is there a better case? And I guess also likewise for the laptops, where it's distributed not to necessarily to every student, but to every student that asks for it.
Right. Yep. So this, first of all, the cost per full-time student, actually we pulled this from our virtual school, right? So this is the cost that to help you understand, like, what is the cost if you were to just hire out a remote, if you were to purchase that service for instruction. And the reason for that number there is because it's about half of it. What it doesn't do is all those other things that we expect for our students. Mm-hmm. So the thought that, that just purchasing online learning would be a solution for us, it's really not, and long term, we would not be able to bring all of those other services that you heard mentioned earlier.
Right.
Otherwise, the student laptops right now, that would be if we equipped every student with our device. So again, if we think about that filtering and making sure that our students, if they were to take devices home and wanting to ensure that we have the security that we expect on our devices and provide every student the same platform so they have the same access, that's what it would cost. So it's really showing you that if we were to fully outfit, and in some organizations, some districts, they do. And so it's just to help you understand that if we were to go top to bottom, where we provide the device for all staff, all students, and that's what that would be, and that would fill the gap. That doesn't even talk about the current devices that we have. That would fill the so that they were run by us.
That makes sense. And then just
trying to get you an idea of scale.
Yeah, no, right. And these are, it's helpful. And in terms of just a quick follow-up then on the purchase services. So that's a scenario where, what if we decide to use our virtual, what we've learned from is there any sense of an alternative to that and cost? It's a much more complicated number to calculate, I imagine.
Yeah, and I think even when we've looked at like, for example, the virtual school over in Appleton, they're really doing what we're doing now across as a district, where they have some of the challenges, as I mentioned with the virtual school, is you need to make sure you have the complexity of certifications to be able to support the unique students that you have. So for example, at the high school level, student goes to 7 different classes. Typically, they sit in a classroom with a teacher each hour who has a different certification, right? And so that's where even the virtual school, there was a challenge to run your own program to scale up. So that's why we are purchasing the service. But at the same rate, what we've given up by purchasing that service is we can't offer special education services in the virtual school. We can't offer English language services in the virtual school or gifted and talent in the virtual school. So there's a limit to that. So part of it is understanding that just to purchase, so if I say, if I Aaron Harder and I give him a 7-period day online, yep, I can do that for that much money. But there's nothing else that wraps around that in terms of the supports so that's an additional expense that would happen. So sometimes when people think, like, whoa, we could do this maybe cheaper here, we can for a certain group of students, but not for all of our students. Really, because all of our students require much, much more.
Thank you. Point taken. That makes sense. Thanks, Jim.
You bet.
Thank you. Any other question? I interrupted someone.
Dr. Torres, this is Marianne Hardebeck. I am experiencing, I think, what many of our students might experience, and that's an interruption to the virtual learning. Our home is without electricity now, and so I am on the phone with you. First of all, I want to thank not only Jim and his team, but Abby and Kay and Kim and their teams as well for all of the work that has gone into making this virtual learning possible. Jim has been our spokesperson tonight, and he's done a wonderful job of bringing in a number of staff who can attest to the kind of effort that has gone into the work that we have been doing over the last month. And I am so grateful to the people who came forward to talk about their experiences and to share their expertise with you. I think if the district is to move forward, and especially in this time of transition that we have with change in leadership, change in board members, you know, we're just being kind of faced with numbers and numbers of changes, that it's going to be very important to hold to those values that we have established in terms of loving our kids first, taking care of each other, and making sure that whatever we do is we're doing it together. And I think that you saw that tonight. And in terms of the equity and access issues, the sustainability, the flexibility that's so important to families, we want to make sure that we continue to emphasize those aspects of our operating principles. Commissioner Harder raised the question of funding. If we have to start the new school year in a virtual environment, and of course we're hoping that that doesn't happen, but it will mean a redeploying of resources. And we will have to look at things like our sub-costs, our additional pay that we do for staff who do other duties outside the regular school day. I think there are some points within our budget that we might be able to access, some resources that we might be able to redeploy, and I think that will be a discussion that budget development will have to engage in over the next couple of weeks if we should find ourselves in the position where we're not able to return to school in the fall.
Thank you, Dr. Hardebeck. I think that we need to work on contingency plans, and that will be a good idea to start earlier so that we can have a good start.
You know, I think about what has happened over the last, I would say, 3 weeks, because when we first moved into this plan, we thought it was going to be for a very short period of time. And the effort, the coordination, the teamwork that is needed to move us forward as a district has never been more, I mean, it's always been there, but it's never been more apparent than it is now. And I think that as we move forward, we want to make sure that we have the well-being not only of our students in mind, and that's always uppermost in our mind, but also the well-being of our staff and the well-being of our families. This is a difficult, stressful time, and for the people who have put this plan in place and the effort that it has taken and the time that it has taken to put this effort in place is almost mind-boggling. So, you know, if we find ourselves having to go forward with this, what I'm asking all of us to keep in mind is that everyone is doing the very best job that they can. It may not be perfect, but we are trying to meet the needs of all of our students, and we're trying to find that balance. And I think you heard that a couple of times tonight from our teachers about that word of that balance, that balancing act we're trying to do in terms of meeting the academic needs, but also meeting the social emotional well-being needs of our students, staff, and families. And I firmly believe that if we can keep our eye and our hearts on the connection part, whatever is meant to happen in terms of the academic achievement will take place. It will take place, and we will succeed because we're taking care of each other.
Thank you. If there are no other questions, then we'll thank the whole team for this presentation. And we'll continue looking forward to hearing about additional contingency plans with real costs. So we'll move to the next point in the agenda, which I don't remember what it was.
I think it is policy review. I'm not able to see the agenda, but I'm thinking it has something to do with a policy. Maida, can you help us?
Yeah, it's already in the board. Can you hear me? Yes. Okay. This is language that we crafted in policy and governance about our relationship with the Eau Claire Public Schools Foundation. This is a conversation that started several months ago, and we arrived to the conclusion that the best way to go for us is to have clear policy that regulates how we relate to a public school foundation. So this is the language that has been offered. And it's all green because it's all new. So we will have to have a first read, and I would ask for a volunteer to read the text.
Glad to read it.
Thank you, Aaron. I would, but I just can't see the small letters.
Yes, it's a little small.
Yeah.
But actually, I'm gonna pull it up on the PDF here real quick. Okay, so the board recognizes the value of its relationship with the Eau Claire Public Schools Foundation and adopts this policy to establish the parameters of the relationship and otherwise make a commitment to the continuation of the strong partnership supporting the district and its schools. Accordingly, the relationship with the ECPSF shall be governed by the following terms. 1, the district shall permit the ECPSF to use the district's facilities for ECPSF purposes in a manner consistent with district policies and procedures. 2, the board shall consider ECPSF requests for operational or funding support on an as-needed basis. 3, to the extent allowed under state and federal law, the district shall provide ECPSF access to directory information for students and their parents or guardians. The ECPSF Executive Director may attend board meetings, retreats, and strategic planning sessions as requested by the superintendent for purposes of providing financial, operational, planning, and fundraising updates. 5, the superintendent or designee shall be invited to all ECPSF board meetings, but shall not be a member of the ECPSF board. 6, the ECPSF shall provide donor and gift information to the district to ensure compliance with applicable laws governing the donation of money or materials to the district. 7, the district shall be responsible for acknowledging any and all gifts, donations, and support in a manner consistent with board policies and procedures. 8, the district shall follow all board policies and procedures, including, without limitation, procurement policies in relation to the utilization of gifts, gifted, or donated funds. 9, the district shall be responsible for any media or social media statements in relation to gifts, donations, and support. The ECPSF shall seek the district's input on any public comment regarding gifts, donation, or support. 10, as ECASD develops the budget each year, it is possible that needs will be identified that the district would need assistance in fundraising for. ECASD will make these requests to the ECPSF to assist with fulfilling the needs. 11, the ECPSF shall be operated as an entity completely separate and distinct from the district and shall maintain its own fiduciary, liability, fidelity, and errors and omissions insurance. The ECPSF shall provide the district with evidence of insurance coverage upon the district's reasonable request. 12, if the board transfers management of any donated funds to ECPSF, the board and ECPSF shall enter into a written agreement pursuant to and consistent with Wisconsin Statute 118.273.
Thank you very much. Any questions about the draft in front of you?
I have one, Dr. Torres.
Yes, Commissioner Nordin.
I don't necessarily see anything that sparks any objection from me here, but I assume that this has been written and worked on in consultation with Sarah French and the foundation for their approval or their
the conversation has followed a long process. They were invited to to P&G, and they have presented multiple versions of what they would like to see. The final language of this draft was made in consultation with our attorneys.
So with this language, it has not been in front of the Public Schools Foundation for their input or approval. We're just putting that on them.
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
I'm not certain that I necessarily see anything, but I'm not as well versed in the world of foundations and how the foundation might work with the district. I would like, if we're going to put this policy in place, to know that it is acceptable with the foundation and to have either their approval or at least their comments on what they object to before we make this decision.
Oh, they have expressed what they object to, and they have expressed their preferences. And this is the language that we decided that we could craft as policy. It is a school board policy, and it is upon the board to approve it.
Okay, then I guess before I can feel okay approving it, I'd like to know what their objections are and to understand why they're not, if they are not fully on board with it, why they're not. Because I don't necessarily know everything that they affect. So if that could just be in a memo or something that comes to board members that weren't involved in the policy and governance process.
Their main objection was that they wanted to be the sole recipient of donations to the school district, and by policy we cannot accept that. The board is the one that accepts gifts to the district, and basically that was their major request.
Okay, that's certainly helpful. If I could still just get some sort of list of their objections or some of the background behind it. Like I said, it doesn't look objectionable to me, but I just like to feel on better footing with how we're interacting before I make a decision.
Any other commentary?
Yes, I have a comment as well.
Yes, Commissioner.
Thank you. Throughout the document, we interchangeably use the term the board, and throughout the document, there's the Eau Claire Community, the ECPSF board, but there's also an intermixing of the Eau Claire Area School District Board, and in many instances, like number 8. The district shall follow all board policies and procedures, including. So I'm not sure if that is referencing the Eau Claire School District Board or the the ECPSF Board. And another example would be under number 2. So it would greatly help if we clarified which boards we're talking about in the language.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I can see that. I can ask for a compilation of all the points that they were the board, the school board, no, the public schools board, the public schools foundation, I'm sorry, were requesting and bring them back to the board. And we'll take care of that language clarification. Any other question or commentary? Hearing none, then we'll send this back to PNG. Our next point in the agenda is request for future agenda items.
And I have one there too, Dr. Torres.
Yes, please go ahead.
I wonder if you could remind me, I know we had talked about having another work session around coherent governments, and I just can't quite remember when we were planning to do that. And then I have a little question about that.
I can't remember either. I know that we wanted to work on the feedback that we would receive from the public, the community, about the referendum, about so that we can start with that process. But then we had to turn that into a survey format. So I guess that has affected our schedule, but we can look into it.
Well, I've just been thinking that.
Dr. Torres and Commissioner Nordine, if I could just interject a little bit. I think what has happened is with the COVID-19 crisis that we've been in, we've had to put certain things aside. And so what I would suggest in terms of agenda setting committee is that we establish some dates for the board to come back together, either virtually or in person, to talk about coherent governance and where you would like to go with that, and then separate that from the referendum discussion. I think they're two different components, perhaps of the same kind of thing that the board is dealing with, but two very different functions of the board. So perhaps tomorrow in agenda setting, the committee can establish some dates for work sessions on coherent governance and also some work sessions on the referendum needs.
I think that's a good idea. Thank you, Dr. Hardebeck. Any other?
Sorry, I was just saying, I just wanted to say, I was thinking with that one silver lining of our board in general having, it being relatively new to the position. I think now after Commissioner Vu leaves, Commissioner Harder is our senior member at 5 years, maybe. We have, I think, an opportunity with coherent governance to really jump in, since we are not a board that has been, long-term beholden 20 years to a different system. I just want to make sure that that remains on the agenda. Thank you, Dr. Hardebeck, for your input.
Any other agenda item?
I do.
Yes, Commissioner Harder.
Thank you. I think it's sort of related in that obviously we've had quite a few very urgent distractions over the last weeks, but we were in the midst of the GAP group discussion, and I wanted to ask about thinking about when we might pick that one up again as well.
We have.
And that is,
yes, Dr. Hardebeck.
I was going to say, Commissioner Harder, that's certainly something that we could discuss about how to address that in agenda setting as well. So it looks to me like we have three big pieces of our pie identified for tomorrow's work.
Thank you.
Any other requests for agenda setting? I would like to request a report on how the hourly employees are doing and what's the plan for the next few weeks until the end of the semester.
Yes, we can provide that plan with you. I will tell you now that principals are responsible for assigning hourly employees with their work duties. So we will get a report from them in terms of the kinds of activity that the hourly staff is involved in, and we will report back to you on that at the next meeting.
Thank you. So the hearing no other item, the agenda setting meeting is tomorrow at 8, and using this same electronic platform. So it is 9:09. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Moved.
Motion to adjourn by Commissioner Harder. It's a second.
Second by Charles.
And honoring Dr. Charles Vu's last open session motion. We're going to close on that note. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much. Have a good night.
Thanks. Good night.
I'll see you tomorrow in agenda setting.
This program was brought to you by a cooperation between Newsworks and the Eau Claire Area School Board. Newsworks is made possible by continuing community support. If you would like to volunteer or make a donation, please contact us via phone at 715-839-5067 or online at valleymediaworks.org.